Hi, friends. This is Emily from the Water is Love film team, and I'm here today with Kate Bunney, founder of Walking Water, and we are going to talk about Walking Water's 10th anniversary and the walk that's coming up this year, and some of the experiences that Kate has had planning such an event, and as well as some reflections on her work as a water activist and yeah, and your dedication to water throughout your life, and what does that look like and feel like as you move through the world in these times. So yeah, I'd love to hear about you and the 10-year anniversary and what's going on with Walking Water this year.
Great. Well, it's really good to be with you, be in conversation today. First of all, I just want to say that I'm the co-founder of Walking Water together with Gigi Coyle.
Right.
And that's a kind of it's an essential element of what Walking Water is about, um, which is that we try as much as possible to be in that kind of collective realm, right? And
Mhm.
maybe I can just share a little bit about how it started, first of all, and that really reflects and determines how we organize these kind of things. So in 2012, vision came to me, right, in a very physical experience of us all walking together, and the sound and the dust and the smell and that whole energy, right? And the words that came were, we need to walk again, and we need to walk with water. And I then went to Gigi because it was there in the valley, and it was Gigi that had invited me to be there. And I was 3 days in the US, right? After spending many years in the Tamira community and working in conflict areas, really, and organizing walks for the Tamira community and partners. Um, so for me, it made sense in the way of like, oh, well, yeah, of course we do a walk. I can do that kind of thing. Um, and I think it aligned very much with vision that Gigi had been working with and carrying for many, many years. And she said to me, well, go away for a year and really work out what that means. And having that year to really look at what does it mean to be responsible for vision? What does it mean to be in relationship with the waters there in that local area, in a place that I really had no idea what was happening, what was that place about? And so to have that year was incredible, to go and bear witness, to really go see and be with the waters, to really listen, to um, to go and be with some of the elders of the Numunewe peoples there of that valley of Payahunadu, and to understand also what does it mean actually very personally to me, and what does it mean to be responsible for this particular vision. And what came to me again and again was that I need to be in a place where I don't own this vision, right, and that I can actually let it go. And that took me on a path of really learning what vision is, right? And that, in so many ways it's a little like, it's like love, right, where you can't possess vision. Vision is its own being, right? And it moves in the way that it wants to move. It's very deliberate when it comes, at what point, and what it inspires in us, right? Or what emerges in us when the conditions are right. Um, and so it was a year of as well as witnessing, okay, what is this local place? Who are these people? And what is it that water is really asking for? It was also about ownership, right? Which is if you're looking at water management, land, and so on, it's so centered around ownership at this point. And am I really able to be free and liberated and liberate myself from that? Right. And so be responsible for it, but not controlling it. And, and so for me, what came from that was the way that we organize walking water has to be guided and taught by water too. Right. So we organize in the way that water is. So that again meant that I spent a lot of time at the beginning just watching water, learning from it, listening with it, seeing what comes up in me when I'm near water, and starting to let go of those constructs that we so often have in this world of control. And I've got to organize this, and I've got to make this, and I've got to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
of stress mode, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so it meant that the form of walking water was almost, it was already moving in its own way, right? And all I had to do was move with it rather than, okay, I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so it's been very much like that from the beginning. And one of the things also with vision is that so often we think it's my vision and it's my unique vision, right? And it's not at all. I don't think we have any unique ideas anymore, right? Whether
It's its
we
own being, right? It also, I mean, I've heard stories of vision passing from one person to another when it doesn't get taken up, or like it wants to manifest itself, right? And it's a really powerful thing. So,
yeah, yeah. And it's many people that we met and still do meet, say, wow, I've dreamt of that. I've always
mhm,
felt that in my body that I want to do something like that. And so it's been, and it is a kind of latent vision and almost like a latent longing in all of us, right?
mhm,
To be able to be in a space of restoring our relationship with water, and and so on.
mhm. Thank you
So
for sharing that. I'm wondering, can you share what are some of the things that you learned from water when you were watching water, and what came to you, and maybe what surprised you about what came?
yeah, and I mean in relation to the like the organizing, right?
Mhm,
So water has, it's not a uniform body, right? It
yeah,
holds so much in it. It remembers, right? It knows how to go home, right? If it's allowed. It holds beauty and grief, right? So close together. It's so fully there, right?
mhm,
Um, and how that kind of moves in us in terms of organizing is that, we don't do any more than we can really do at any one time. We don't need to be big, right? We, one of the, I think the core elements in so many nonprofits is that they need to grow, right? That's a
mhm,
sign of success, is that we
right.
grow. And what happens often is then we get really stressed, right? Because we don't
Mhm,
have money, or we don't have enough money, we don't have enough people, we don't, and we get into that. And what water teaches us in that kind of organizing is that growth is not about that, right? It's about, at times we need to be small, right? And we move in a different way, or we even stay still. And then at other times, we need to be really big, and we need to be fast, and we need to move, you know? And the only way that we can really do that is if we're in a frame of abundance, right? And a way of listening, and a trust, right? That we really do receive what we need at any one time. And that needs a lot. It needs a lot of faith to be able to organize in that way. Um, but what I've experienced again and again and again is that when you do organize that way, everything that you need comes. It may not be exactly what you thought it was, right? But it will come. So, yeah, Pop wants to go off.
Yeah, that's really touching, because I think in so much of our, or what I perceive in activism and political organizing, is the urgency, and the urgency to like move, and to move fast, and to make decisions, and to retaliate, and to just like be this hard thing and hard force, because so much is being violated. And it's like so understandable too, right? But also, water gets through the stone and moves around the stones and is nourishing in a different way, and is life bringing. And yeah, I just feel like that is also part of my longing and my work to connect with water, is that being on the part of the team that banned fracking in New York State, and going to California and working on the Monterey Measure Z campaign to ban the wastewater injection wells there. It was just, it's a constant fight, and you're up against these forces that are so harsh and violating and terrible to the earth. And then it's like, do I want to be right there and on the front line of fighting these forces? And I was for a minute, and it burned me out. And then I was like, I need to protect or be with water in a different way. But water was always the reason that I was in those spaces, always. And then how, instead of necessarily being up against fossil fuel companies, how can I support water in its life-giving energy, and to support it to thrive and move? And what does that look like? Which is why I was so motivated to create this film, to show the possibilities that are out there. And yeah, I know that you are part of the decision-making team in Tamara for the water retention space there. And I'm really curious, what was it like for you to enter into that project? And what was it like to make those decisions, and keep water at the center, even if there was probably a lot of human matter, right? Like how to focus, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the human matter is always there.
Yeah.
It just is. And it's the other aspect of organizing, or um yeah, of organizing, is that we we constantly think that, it's like we're up against this, and it's us, right? Or, we have to provide this need, and it's, there's a linear aspect to it. um when we start to look at growth or response in a different way, then I think we can start to create a circle, right? In that
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to respond to all the needs, right? And I also need to look at what my needs are, right? Because so too often we kind of almost sacrifice ourselves in some way, and it's I think a kind of a white privilege moment, right, where we need to save things,
Right.
right? And actually, we need to try and save something in ourselves too, because that something in us is creating that
Exactly.
external, right?
Yeah.
So there's all that. But if you're small, and then you have to rely on collaboration. And as soon as you have to rely on collaboration, then you get to those human issues,
Mhm.
those human relationships, and that's when the work starts. And and I think that's it's what water is asking us to do, right? Is to be in relationship,
Mm.
right? And to work together on a different level.
Mhm.
Um, and that, it doesn't mean that those actions are not good. They're essential, right? And we're moving into a space again where, from getting a lot of gains, in a sense, kind of environmental protections and so on, because of those actions, we're
Mhm.
moving again into a space where, those protections are being lost, right? And we're very soon, I think, gonna, you know, need to start protecting clean water again. I mean, really? It's, you know, don't want to go down there too far,
Yeah.
but
It's
that's reality.
infuriating to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so the reality is that it's not just about, okay, let's just be in circle and let's just da 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 da. We need all of these movements. uh,
Mhm.
But when it is a case of we're getting burnt out, and I know that one too, definitely been burnt out. Um, that doesn't serve,
Mhm.
right? And so how do we find a way for each of us to relate and be in relationship again in different ways?
Mhm.
So, but the retention landscape in Tamira was massive, right? On so many different levels. Um, yeah, it was the human relating within the community, but it's also the relating with people we hoped would support us financially to do that, right? And then there's all the local region. How do we have the buy-in of the local region, right? And then politically, how do we get the buy-in there too? So,
Mhm.
that kind of project, it touched every single layer. And, you know, being part of it, but, I was a minuscule part in a sense of that whole work, but bearing witness a lot was just a huge amount of respect, right, for the way that we as Tamira held that whole project at that time, and
Mhm.
with a lot of integrity. And
Mhm.
essentially, it's really that if we can organize, live, and work in integrity, then we did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe so.
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah. And with this integrity and the vision that you've been carrying and the call to walk again, what has you organizing to walk again? Like, why do it another time? And what about it is contributing to the vision that you hold
Mm.
moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was it probably about a year ago or so, with what was happening in the world, there was a very deep kind of impulse in me that I need to walk again, right? And not just, we do walks in Los Angeles with our partners, the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission, um, and with also Tina Calderon from the Tongva Elder. We do that, and they're day walks, right? And they have specific kind of reasons for being. what I felt like and what I wanted to do was, really do a long walk again, right? And when you're doing like a 3-week walk and you're carrying everything that you need with you, you're in a small group and you're moving, um, things change. It changes you as in your system, and it brings much more into the light again some of those aspects that we've just been talking about, right? Which is
Mhm.
basically life, right? When you're out there, you're camping, you you're sleeping with the stars. You're very conscious of the water that you have because, because of the story, we're carrying most of our water.
Mhm.
You're very aware of the animals and the other beings that are around. And there's something like we come into a place where um, it's really a coalition of all beings, right? And that there is something, it's just right, right? It's there is something about it where it's like, oh, now I am in the circle. And that for me, and we're all different, but that for me is the deepest response I can give to what is happening in the world. So that was where the original was like, we really got to walk again. We got to get that going. And then I realized, oh, this year is 10 years since
Mm.
it started. So it all started to make sense. And first step was really talking with our partners, and that was Kathy Bancroft, elder of the Lone Pine Paiute tribe, Charlotte Lang, who is the tribal chairperson of the Katsetika tribe up in Mono Lake area, and then with the Owens Valley Indian Water Commission, as well as the Walking Water team. And everybody was like, absolutely yes. And so, what we call it is a kind of a 10-year acknowledgement, right? Rather than, originally I was calling it a celebration. And it's like, it's not about celebrating. And it doesn't mean that there isn't joy in it. Um, but acknowledgement seems to have more of a grounding to it. And, an understanding of how far, not just walking water, but really the water story, how
Mm.
far it has gone in those 10 years and how far it hasn't gone, right? And
Mhm.
what needs to shift and change, and how can we, keep um, give impacting and including stories to try and change that.
Right.
Um,
Can
so
you expand on that? Like, what has changed and what hasn't changed, and what politically and with the water situation, what are some headlines about what's been going on in the past 10 years since you walked in that area?
yeah, I mean, what has changed? I think that one thing that has changed is the depth of collaborations, right, between organizations up in the and tribal organizations up in the valley, right? There's more collaboration, there's more inclusivity, right? um 10 years ago there was still very kind of what happens in most conflict areas is when the oppressor, in that sense, kind of creates these factions between those that could actually be collaborating and strengthening. And that's changing. So it was really still pretty obvious in 10 years ago. Now that's changing a lot. There's a lot more kind of crossover. Um, there's a lot more relationship with Los Angeles, right? Um, there's a lot more, um, I would say, I wouldn't say a lot more, but I think that there's definitely a beginning of willingness, right? And so those are those are the kind of things that have changed. The things that haven't changed is that there is still a huge amount of pumping happening in the valley to take the water down. Um, even even when, last year or earlier in this year, the LA mayor agreed to lesser pumping, and then the Department of Water and Power in LA increased the pumping up to the maximum level that they're allowed.
Mhm.
And so there are still these um, these parts where it's very difficult to trust, right? And that the agreements shift too quickly. Um,
Mhm.
so those things are still happening. Yeah, so those kind of things uh, are there, and and there's also opportunity to keep moving that and changing that. And one of the biggest reasons for that opportunity is because Los Angeles is realizing that the infrastructure that they have is vulnerable,
Mhm.
right? To the point where it's actually pretty dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Um, the water that comes down from the valley, that's 30%, right, of LA's water
Mhm.
need. And it's at least part of the aqueduct that takes that water down is running alongside a huge fault line, right? So
Mhm.
those things are happening. And
Mhm.
I think Los Angeles, the many of the citizens of LA are starting to realize this. And so, a couple of years ago, they decided to vote for an increased tax that would specifically go to different models of water management. So
Mhm.
to start to retain the water
Great.
is there in LA. So
Mhm.
things like that are huge, right?
Right.
We're working together with Accelerate Resilience Los Angeles, led by
And
Andy.
David, yes. Yeah. Cool.
And they've just brought out the Living Infrastructure Field Kit, which is an incredible tool, right? Which essentially empowers every citizen. At
Mhm.
the moment, it's LA, but I know that they're planning to increase that. Um, really has the chance to redesign, remodel their local areas, right? For free. It's a
Wow.
free app that you can, I don't know if they'd call it an app, but it's one of those technical things,
Yeah.
uh, right? Where everybody has the opportunity to use that. And
Yeah.
the amount of information that you can get with it
Mhm.
is incredible, and it's really accessible. Even I can
Great.
use it, which is, you know,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to
And
get the link from you and share it in the comments of this video when we post it.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
that makes me also curious because of the fires in LA and what has happened. What, if any, thing that you know of, what are the opportunities that this kind of tragedy has created for water retention and landscape, like water retention landscape design, and are people thinking about that, or like what's up after post
Yeah.
fire? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a huge amount,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can share a little bit of what I know, but it's like the opportunity that is there now, um, is that every house, like newly built house, for example, would have a water tank underneath, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's the kind of thing that is would as if it were me, it would be like, oh, that's essential at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there is enough water that is coming down, right? It's just not being
Right.
caught.
Exactly.
Um, and I don't know, but how much water is still being taken down the LA River, right? How can there be redesign there, right? And there's a lot of people that want redesign of the LA
Mhm.
River. So things like that. I think that yeah, so that those kind of things I think would be opportunities, right? And
Mhm.
the more possibility we have to retain the water, the more um potential for sustainability there is.
Right.
So hopefully those kind of things happen, but
Mhm.
you know it's constantly needing to keep a check on things as well, right? Because politically at the moment, everybody, or there is that movement that is very excited about how quickly everything has been cleaned up.
Mm.
Right? Now, there are reasons that at least some reasons why it can be cleaned up so quickly. Right?
Mhm.
That's because they relax certain laws, right? And certain agreements and conditions. So some of the non-profits like Heal the Bay, for example, are working tirelessly right now to just keep an eye on what's going on and what then are the impacts on the ocean and
Mhm.
and so on. And so
Right.
it's that kind of juggling.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's I've been curious about it, and after such events like this, even just around the world, like how can we redesign and think well about the land and think well about the water moving forward so that we can be more resilient and we can regenerate and not necessarily have to be adapting, right? But really work with what we have and the
Yeah,
opportunities that present themselves, even when they're tragedies.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And
Hmm.
there is a huge amount of people that have been really significantly displaced.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of suffering there. And so there's a lot of care and compassion for what many people are experiencing there. And then, okay, that's an opportunity too, right? So, yeah, I mean, people like Andy Lipkiss have been, and they see
Yeah.
it could
Hmm.
be. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
if anybody's interested in that, he is a great person to be following and Accelerate Resilience LA as well.
Yeah. He was a huge inspiration for our film too. We
Yeah.
were reading a lot of him and paying attention to his work, his life work that
Yeah.
inspired us in a big way. Yeah.
Yeah. And, he was one of the integral team from the beginning of Walking Water.
Mm.
And I spent a lot of time really trying to, understanding what he sees. Um, and, realizing and starting to know that it's that relationship, we're talking about relationships again, but that relationship between LA and Paya Hunadu is an essential one. And it's a lot of healing is needed, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's a dependent relationship that needs to be broken in a sense,
Mhm. Mhm.
or worked on, let's say.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could say a little more about the organizing.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would love to hear it. Before the call, we were talking about the work that goes into organizing such an event like the Lake to Lake Walk. And I know from my experience organizing on the Two Row Wampum Renewal Campaign, which involved a canoe and kayaking trip from Albany to New York City over 2.5 weeks. It takes so much work and so much relationship building and so much uh, skin thickening to go along with the vision and to say, yes, I commit myself to this and go through the hard work. And yeah, I would just love to hear from you what it takes to organize such a thing, because I feel like those of us who are producing events and opportunities to heal our relationships with the earth and with water, um, it can go unseen. And then there's just the events of it. And just want to honor your work by asking you what does it involve, and what are you working on, and to make it happen in a good way.
Thanks for that.
Mhm.
Um, I suppose I would probably start when you said that it's unseen. I think everything is seen
Mm.
on some level,
On
right?
some level, yes.
I,
I meant by
like
humans mostly.
right. I mean, my dog, he sees it all. He sees it all,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So there is, but there is that part of like, why am I doing it?
Mhm.
What do I need in order to keep going? And and I know that for a long time I needed response. I needed people to see that. And I think on that level, I don't care anymore, really, because creator, greater being sees what we do, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that I think that allows me to at least sometimes get my ego out of the way, a bit. So that can help.
Mhm.
So, but what you also said is that it's all about relationship again, right? And it's true. When we started organizing the first walk 10 years ago, it took us 3 years, right? And that was really to understand the place, to be in relationship with the many people of that place, to be in relationship also with donors and everybody else that you need. It's basically every element of life is encapsulated in this project, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and so there's multiple relationships that need to be established and start to grow before you can start to walk. Um, and so there's that aspect. The aspect also in this country is that most of the land is private, right?
Mhm.
Or controlled by certain
Yeah.
agencies and so on. And so that's a huge, huge piece of work that has to happen. The first, in the first walks, it would take us a year, more or less full time, each year to get the permits that you needed from each agency as you're
Right.
moving down the path. And
Mhm.
the very reality of that is that you sit in a Jeep or truck, right? And you have your computer open and you have all the different programs that show you which GPS point is owned, which piece of land is owned by which agency. And you can stop in a place where you work out like 8 miles, 10 miles a day. So you drive that 10 miles, you check the GPS on that, who owns that land. Is that a land agency that will allow you to sleep on the land? Is it one that actually is underfunded? So is actually going to take a huge amount of time to be able to get permits?
Mhm.
Or is it the one that's actually pretty cool and will give you the permit pretty easily?
Mhm.
You could be like half a mile, even a quarter of a mile out. So then you just drive a little bit further, get the GPS on that and track it, right? And then you
So
go on.
intricate, so many details.
I mean,
And
it's
you can
huge.
only know by doing, right?
A lot of it, yeah, which is one of the fun parts, right? Is
Mhm.
that you just get to go out there and be with it. Um, Another element, particularly in the first walk, and and partly why I'm saying about the first walk is because it was so much easier on this walk, because of all those relations. But on the first walk, sometimes we didn't know which route we were going to go. And so it would be, okay, there's a hawk that just flew over and it's going that way. So let's go that way. And a lot of it
Mm,
is by chance and just listening and observing,
mhm,
trusting that, all of the beings on that route are trying to help us and guide us. And then there's the other aspect that most of these trails have been walked before, right, by ancestors.
mhm,
And so there was also many times where you needed to just get out of the truck and walk a path. And do I see people walking there? Right? Can can I imagine what has already happened and been on that trail?
mhm.
And that is also an essential part of the guiding the route.
Yeah.
So in terms of the route, because of the relations that we've built up, where last time 10 years ago, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power would not let us camp along the water. And in that valley they own all the land, right? A couple of
Yeah.
miles each side of the river.
Mhm.
This time they've given us full permission,
Wow.
right? And so it's actually incredibly easy this year in terms
Mhm.
of route, because we're working only with the Department of Water and Power.
Mhm.
They're supporting us to be in the right places. And so that's one of the many ways that things have changed, right? So the
Mhm.
Department of Water and Power, while there are still many issues, it's not all great. Um, there are steps, and you can see that they are trying to
Mhm.
change some things. So
Yeah, I mean, that speaks a lot to our, I think the tendency for activists to be kind of retaliatory towards these kinds of institutions or politicians, and sometimes the best thing is to become their friend, right? And to get on their side in some way. Um, yeah.
yeah, I mean, the thing is that I've seen again and again what the Department of Water and Power have done to the tribes up there.
Mhm.
And I fully get that there would not be any trust,
Sure, of
right?
course.
And
Yeah.
no real desire to collaborate with them, because
Mhm, mhm.
what they see
Absolutely.
is that they don't collaborate.
Yeah.
The position that Walking Water has is that we're predominantly a white-led organization of
Mhm.
project, and even say organization.
Yeah.
Um, and we have, in that sense, the privilege, but also the access, right, that we need to use to do that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not impacted by what happens there on a daily basis, right?
Mhm.
And so it's important for me to find ways to collaborate with these institutions and to create relationships that can then question and be in with those people,
Yeah. That
and say,
was, sorry, go ahead.
but just that it's to be able to say, brilliant, thank you for doing that, that's great. And then, oh, that's not so good, and how
Yeah.
do we put this out,
Right.
and being able to be in that position where
Mhm.
you can praise in a sense or witness the good things, and also include the critic when it's needed, but be productive in it too.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, that
That's
was one of the biggest learnings that I took away from my work with Neighbors of the Onondaga Nation in Syracuse, New York, and in the two-row wampum is like a treaty is between two peoples, and that is also our treaty, and we have a responsibility on our side to hold our government and our people responsible for what we agreed to, and it's
uh,
only us that can go there. It's only us that can convince them. It's only us that actually has the right to do that. So how do we use our privilege and our access as best as possible to, uphold these agreements and treaties and relationships and friendships and care for the land and the waters, So
Yeah, definitely. It's, fact is that my identity is one that um, continually benefits
mhm,
from institutions
right.
like that, right? And I need to then be responsible for that benefit
Mhm,
and also question it and be critical, but be in there with them, right?
mhm,
And stay and be
mhm.
honest. And which means also if they do something good to say that to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then get out the way when it's
Yeah.
that's essential too.
Mm,
So yeah.
yeah.
So and
Well,
then
go
the
ahead.
other aspects are really, we have a moving kitchen, and so we need all our food. You need to then store the food along the way, right? And so that we have access to that. We need water. We need to be able to carry water. Um, and then, the other aspects is that, we'll be circling up, we'll be facilitating different groups at different times. And so, we're already in that process with all the walkers, right? The walkers already started, and
Mhm,
it's how do we support each walker to come with as much knowledge as possible to where they are coming, right? And what the stories are, and to be as self-sufficient as they can be, to be as fit as they need to be able to move.
mhm,
It's extreme. The
yeah.
temperatures can be 110 plus. The valley in the afternoons, you can get that wind, which is
Mhm,
kind of notorious. A lot of dust,
yeah.
because it's been so dried out. So, it can be physically very tough.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, but you get into the zone and then it is.
yeah.
So it's basically organizing every aspect of your life for multiple people for multiple days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Legit.
Oh, well, thank you for your hard work and for organizing in this way to elevate the consciousness and awareness of people about the water situation in California, and to really be building the necessary relationships to care for the water in that part of the world. And I'm just wondering, can people still sign up to walk or volunteer, or how can people get involved and support the Lake to Lake walk?
Yeah. Well, we're actually full at the moment. We've got a waiting list, so if people are interested, they can contact me. At the moment, the most essential parts are fundraising, right?
Mhm,
That's what we're with at the moment. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. We've got a song circle that will be coming up, I think in June. People can just join us for that.
mhm,
Uh, we have an online auction at the moment with gifts that have been given by our community to go bid, and just things like that. And then also sharing the story, right? Being with that, following that. We will have a couple of public events in there. So people that are local to the valley probably, um, we'll be presenting about that soon as well. And
mhm,
then the other is if people want to do parallel events. So if they want to take the opportunity to go be with their own local water body at that time, then we can connect up through those stories.
mm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you also for your support and sharing the film, Water is Love. And If you're still with us, we'll put in those links that Kate mentioned into the comments section, and yeah, share this with your friends and support Walking Water to support the waters in California. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Just to say thank you for making the film, and in the way that you're moving it through with the world, I think is really essential. And the story is one that we really all need to be with in our own way. And
Mm.
yeah, so thank
Thank
you for
you.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Kate.